Today on Hearts of Heroes. First responders have to use all their resources to find a young bicyclist badly injured on a desolate trail.
I felt the bone shift and I was like, that's not normal.
Plus, 3 people are trapped in the middle of a roaring flash flood.
Anytime someone's stuck on top of their car in rushing water, it's a life or death situation.
Their only hope for rescue, a daring helicopter airlift.
And we knew they needed help right away.
No time to waste. First responders were racing to help.
Holiday weekends, the perfect time to be in nature and enjoy the outdoors. But on Memorial Day weekend of 2019, what should have been an exhilarating bike ride almost turned tragic when a young cyclist crashed on a mountain trail above Holly, Michigan.
First responders would have to use their wits, experience, and a little help from modern technology to try and save them.
50 miles outside of Detroit sits the picturesque village of Holly, Michigan. Although it has the largest ski resort in southeastern Michigan, it only has 6,000 year-round residents.
Holly, Michigan is a bedroom-type community, a very tight-knit group of people. It has a lot of open areas.
Holly's just a fun little place. It's got a lot of little nice little shops, so a small town vibe. Nice little mountain bike trails around.
In the hills overlooking the village sits the Holly Recreation Area. It's a 7,800-acre state park featuring lakes, footpaths, and mountain bike trails. In the summertime, Mount Holly attracts cyclists, nature lovers, and tourists from all over.
The trail system back there is comprised of several different loops. You have the West Loop, which is anywhere from 6 to 8 miles, and it gets more advanced into the mountain biking, going over logs, over areas, steep hills, steep cliffs.
Pete Hudson is from Holly, and he's been mountain biking for almost 4 years.
Biggest draw to mountain biking was the adrenaline rush, the feeling that just goes through you when you're jumping in the air and just going through the trees and just having fun. It's just a feeling that you don't get through anything else.
No matter what your experience level is, experts advise that bikers take certain precautions before hitting the trails.
Make sure you're wearing the proper knee pads, elbow pads. A helmet is imperative. Try not to go out alone, so you have somebody else with you in the event you take a spill and become unconscious. Download search and rescue apps on your phone. And if you have that up while you're traveling or hiking, something happens, you just look right at your phone and it tells you where you're at.
With the weather warming up, Pete decided to pack up his bike, head to Mount Holly, and make the most of Memorial Day weekend.
It was the first nice, really good day, dry day for a long time that year, which was kind of nice because it was really wet that year.
Once he was on his bike, Pete was just enjoying that rush of hitting the trails and being out in nature.
So you got jumps and big, huge descents and stuff. Biggest highlight was I was actually able to hit 29 miles an hour, which was pretty nuts out there. It's not a course meant for that.
Even though Pete is an experienced mountain biker, he was not expecting what happened next.
The accident started when I was going down a pretty steep descent there and then saw a guy standing in the middle of the trail and I was like, oh boy, this is not gonna be good.
Pete swerved off the trail to avoid the hiker, but then he slammed into a tree.
I went down immediately afterwards. My feet are clipped into the pedals, which is a type of pedal they use to keep your feet on the pedals, and I couldn't turn my foot to get it off of the pedal, which was another problem.
Not realizing how badly injured he was, Pete told the hiker he didn't need any help, and the man left Pete there, alone.
I said I was fine, and I realized I'm not fine. I can't get out of my bike now, and now what do I do?
Pete managed to free himself from his clip pedal. At first, he thought he might be able to walk it off.
As soon as I put all my weight onto that leg, not thinking because that's my normal leg to saddle the bike, it shifted. I felt the bone shift. I was like, that's not normal.
What Pete didn't know is that he had broken his femur where it connects to the hip. And once the adrenaline wore off, Pete was unable to walk and in excruciating pain.
And I just sat down and just called paramedics at that point.
First responders jumped into action, but the rescue team faced a major obstacle.
The problem with this that we had was he didn't know where he was, and there's multiple loops through the Holdridge bike trails, but he didn't know which one he was on.
Coming up, before a medical team can rescue Pete, they have to first find him.
So we had to split and kind of go off what his best description of the area or which path he had taken at that point.
Before we get to that, this safety tip.
It's unfortunate, but natural disasters can be extremely devastating, not just physically, but emotionally as well.
Though it may be difficult, if you find yourself in a tragic or trying situation, try not to neglect the emotional needs of those around you. Everyone experiences tragedy differently, so be a pillar of strength for those in need and know you will get through it together.
Your health and that of those around you is of paramount importance, so be strong and focus on the here and now. You won't regret it, and neither will those depending on you.
On Memorial Day weekend 2019, mountain biker Pete Hudson was enjoying an adrenaline-pumping ride through the trails in Holly, Michigan. But a brutal collision with a tree left him severely injured and unable to walk. Now, EMTs and paramedics would have to find some way to get to him in the miles of desolate trails.
At that point, we're looking at, first and foremost, finding him. So we've got the wide area search that we have to cover.
First responders mobilized and put together what's called a hasty search team.
A hasty search team is basically you're going out right away to find anything you can. It's basically walking in a direction that they think the injured people are and calling out and stopping and listening for a return call.
While the team heads out on foot, Captain Timothy Seal sent out an ATV fitted with what's called a Stokes basket, designed to transport injured patients. But even this presented challenges.
The ATV is the best way to get people in or out, and from time to time it's very narrow, so the ATV's got to take alternative paths, and we do have to hand carry the Stokes baskets from time to time to get around obstacles.
Finally, after an exhaustive search, EMT Randy Finkbeiner found Pete off a narrow trail.
And we assessed him and determined that he possibly had a femur fracture and or hip injuries.
After administering first aid, the ATV arrived. The question now was how to get Pete out quickly and safely.
Trying to figure out how we're going to move this guy off-road in terrain where you have the possibility of losing 1,500 to 2,000 cc's of blood if we move him the wrong way.
Once they got Pete loaded into the basket, a team of rescuers began forging a path for the vehicle.
We've got people up ahead looking at the trail, clearing the trail, making it wider, making sure we're on the right trail so that our actual drivers and attendants to the patient don't have to worry about which direction to go.
Rescuers armed with chainsaws began cutting down trees and clearing the path. Finally, 3 hours after the wreck, Pete was loaded onto an ambulance and taken to the hospital. There, he was immediately rushed into surgery.
When the doctor came in, he basically said, we're gonna put a pin in your leg to basically fuse your bones together, and then one down your femur with 2 other screws.
Of course, it took Pete a while to recuperate, but 4 months later, he was right there, back in the saddle.
I've been back on a bike really in October. I started riding again, and I put in about 300 miles since then.
First responders are always learning and improving the rescue techniques. And this particular event had a very positive impact on the North Oakland County response team.
I've created a map book with the overlays already overlaid in the area. So if I get a marker number on the trail, I already know what grid section that's in. I can hand out the GPSs and tell them go.
Even though they didn't have all these tools at their disposal during Pete's rescue, these heroes are still proud of the job they did that day.
It was an extremely successful rescue that was a huge collaborative effort. We couldn't have done it without every person that was there.
Maricopa County, Arizona is known for its beautiful but rugged desert terrain. In monsoon season, it's known for something even more ominous, flash floods.
For 3 unfortunate people caught in these torrents, they would need a team of highly trained air rescuers.
Maricopa County is located in south central Arizona. With more than 4 million people, it's the state's most populous county. Here, you'll find the bustling capital of Phoenix, as well as picturesque desert landscapes just outside of town.
Phoenix and the surrounding areas are all desert areas with a lot of mountain areas around, so people go out and participate in outdoor activities around here.
That area is mainly for off-roading, horseback riding, hiking, that kind of stuff.
Of course, being in the desert means that the summer brings sweltering temperatures.
Summers here in Maricopa County are brutal. They're brutally hot. A lot of people say that it's a dry heat, but when you're talking 115, 118 degrees, it's hot.
Once July and August rolls around, there's potential for floods with the rains, what we call the monsoon season.
Monsoons are summer weather events that we have here. A lot of times they'll start out with a dust storm blowing in. The thunderstorm pushes down air and downdrafts, and it causes a huge rain event and downpours.
Those monsoon storms can cause flash floods in a matter of moments.
We get a lot of flash floods down here, and it can cause some rivers to flow at 10 feet deep or whatnot, so it causes real trouble for us.
When it rains, it can really come down in that area. The water can really move. I've seen it other times where the little trickle of water can turn into a mini Colorado River. It's just whitewater rapids.
And to make matters worse, the desolate Arizona terrain can make rescues extremely difficult.
There's a lot of places in Maricopa County that aren't populated, have no roads, are very mountainous, and sometimes the helicopter is the only way in within a reasonable amount of time.
Luckily, the Maricopa Sheriff's Department has a specially trained search and rescue team who are also licensed pilots.
Michael White and his partner Terry Heimgartner are both sheriff officers and experienced helicopter pilots.
Terry and I have worked together for several years now. We get together constantly and train. The trust has to be 100% every time we go out.
In late July of 2021, the monsoon season ramped up, making it an extremely busy season of rescues.
We had 4 or 5 days of rain. You would have one storm roll in, and then a couple hours later, another storm would roll in. And it was really a soaker of a week.
There was a flash flood advisory for that whole weekend, not only for Maricopa County, but the whole state of Arizona was expecting a lot of rain that weekend.
On the afternoon of July 25th, 3 men in a pickup truck were off-roading near the Agua Fria River. But when a flash flood hit, this dry riverbed turned into a gushing torrent.
A lot of times people will go across when it's dry, and they come back to it and there's some water running, and they think that their vehicles that are bigger and four-wheel drive can make it across, and a lot of times they can't.
As the rushing water swept the truck downriver, the men scrambled to the top of their car and called 911.
We were out on another call, and I heard on the radio another call come out for the Agua Fria area.
Dispatch said that there was a vehicle stuck in the Agua Fria River, and he had floated downstream a couple hundred yards, and he's stuck. Anytime
someone's stuck on top of their car in rushing water, it's a life or death situation. At any time, their car can tumble, and they're thrown off into the water. We really quickly need to get there to help them, or it could be tragic.
But as the sheriffs flew to the Agua Fria River, the storm kept growing.
As we're flying along, Mike mentioned to me, he says, "I don't know if we can make it." I'm like, what's wrong? And he goes, "Well, we got a dark cloud right in front of us, right where we're heading." So I kind of looked up and I saw, yeah, it was pretty black right in front of us.
You can hear some thunder, so there's lightning in the area, which is not great for a helicopter. So you start wondering about, is it gonna get too much rain coming down? Is the lightning getting too close where we can't fly?
Well, the challenge is flying in that type of weather is visibility. If our visibility isn't there, we're not gonna fly. We'd have to think of a different way to rescue these folks.
Coming up, the rescue team has to perform a dangerous air rescue.
We've had it before where they jump towards the helicopter and they want to try to lunge towards the skids.
But first, a safety tip.
Sometimes traveling during the winter is inevitable, so be sure to stock up on essentials before you hit the road.
Remember to dress appropriately for the weather and keep an extra blanket, food, water, and cell phone charger in your car, even if you're only traveling a short distance.
You may not be able to control the weather, but you can control how prepared you are.
In late July 2021, powerful thunderstorms rolled over Maricopa County, Arizona. The result? Flash flooding. Helicopter rescue pilots were called in to help the 3 men who were trapped on top of their truck in the rushing Agua Fria River.
The Agua Fria comes from northern Arizona, so it's dropping in elevation pretty quick. That water can really get moving once it starts collecting.
Unfortunately, these kinds of rescues are not uncommon.
That's the big thing that we'll run into is people are stuck in the middle of washes in their vehicles that they tried to drive across, and then their vehicle will get flooded out.
Experts have some advice for anyone driving in these very dangerous conditions.
If you see some water, especially if it's over a foot deep, don't even try to cross it. If it's really moving, it'll take a full-size vehicle. A foot of water can move a full-size vehicle. It's not worth your life to risk getting on the other side.
As pilot Michael White and his partner, Terry Heimgartner, got into that helicopter, they could see a storm on the horizon, and that was going to complicate the flight.
We got to a point where there was another storm that went all the way to the ground with the clouds, so we couldn't initially get into where they were. So we had to make a hard left turn, go around to the south, and try to come in from the other side.
The maneuver was going to cost them precious minutes, and they still didn't know how the men were doing on top of the truck.
That probably took us at least 15, 20 minutes to get to the location. And immediately when we got to location, we saw the black pickup stuck in the middle of the river, and we saw the 3 individuals on top of the vehicle, and we knew they needed help right away.
They were in bad shape, and the water was up to the side windows on this big lifted 4x4 truck. So there were several feet of water, and it was rushing fast.
With nowhere to land, they'd have to perform a risky rescue.
We came in and we hovered next to the roof of the truck. That's where the 2 guys were that were on the very top part.
But Pilot White would have to rely on his partner to guide him close enough to the truck.
I'm harnessed on, I'm standing out in the skid of the helicopter, and I'm telling the pilot, how far down he needs to go. And I'm flying the helicopter with my eyes, and he's actually moving the controls.
The water was really muddy, and it was flinging muddy water onto the windshield, making it really hard to see. So I got to rely on the guy in the back to be my eyes to see the ship and tell me, come left a little, come right a little, whatever I need to do to adjust the ship. And as he's doing the rescue.
As they got closer to the vehicle, they had to make sure that the men didn't panic.
I'm telling the people just to stay put, because we've had it before where they jump towards the helicopter. They want to try to lunge towards the skids.
They've been there for a long time. They've been thinking for a long time that they could tumble down the river and possibly die. So they have this tendency to want to jump.
After they made sure everyone was calm, the next step was to get the men safely on board.
I got Mike in position where it was a good spot for me to grab a hold of the guy's arm, and he reached out to me. I grabbed him by his hand and his arm. The first guy slipped on the windshield, so I had at the same time kind of grab him to prevent him from falling onto the hood where the water was.
Terry managed to pull the first guy inside the helicopter.
From there, I walked Mike into where he needed to be again, which wasn't much. He just had to move a couple more feet. Did the same thing with the second guy. Was able to grab his hand and arm and pulled him into the helicopter.
But at this point, they reached the weight capacity of the helicopter. They'd have to come back for the third man.
We dropped the first 2 guys off and quickly returned and got the third guy. Again, did the same thing and talked Mike in how far down, how far to the right he needed to go, and we grabbed the third guy and brought him back to the same location to where the deputy was waiting for him.
The 3 men were shaken, but unharmed. And it was all due to this team of brave and highly trained men who put their own lives on the line.
These particular rescues, the water rescues, are some of the most dangerous ones we do. And so it comes into trusting your partner, building that trust over years and training. and it prepared us for this day of these rescues.
As we've just seen, it is really difficult to predict when an accident is going to happen.
But when they do, we can be sure that there will always be brave heroes willing to put their own lives on the line to save the day.
Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.